right. Welcome. Good morning and or afternoon, depending on which time zone you are in. I hope everybody is having a great day today. It is Thursday, so we got past hump day. Woohoo! Which is always a good thing every week. We're on the downhill slope of the week. So as we're waiting for some folks to join, and we've got more coming in as I speak, I want to, quickly just share a little bit more, like I normally do, a little content here. If you haven't already, join the collective. The collective, CX on the Rocks. We're here to help business professionals like you and others navigate the challenges of CX today. The experience, both from a customer's perspective, is a little bit more challenging because their expectations have continued to increase. And then for us as practitioners or business leaders, with that expectation comes more work we have to do. But join us here. If you hit join now, you'll be asked a few pieces of information to fill out. But then ultimately you'll jump in, and a few notes here as I log in myself. I thought I had pre-done that. You'll be able to access all the community data. So we've got great conversations going on. The events are listed for all future events. You can look at posts. You can look at the newsletter. You can access the consultants. You can grab content, and all the recordings after the events will be right here. So one quick note for everybody is if you haven't already joined, please do so, because soon we won't really allow for, or we'll try not to really have external access. It'll all be through the community so that, you'll get the invitation through the community, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you join. It's free to join. And it's an opportunity, again, for you to get access to some great content and the agenda for these great sessions, which is, what we're here for. We're here to have conversations. And we're here to help, in these changing times, navigate all the different aspects. And so today, I'm so happy to introduce Skip Picciano. He is our resident expert on contact centers, especially contact center technology, and really CX technology as well. And he helps, make sure that anybody you're going to work with, from a tech perspective especially, can keep them honest, get them to deliver the real services and support, and drive value to your organization. So I won't steal your thunder too much more, Skip. Jump on in.
Thanks, Sean. Hey, welcome everybody. I appreciate y'all taking your time today. I don't know if you heard about us through email invite of any of us on here, Zoom invite, but we all know that your time is valuable. So again, very much appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into some slides. While I'm showing you the 7 proven strategies today, please put comments on the chat, put questions on the chat. Sean and Kellen are going to do a great job interrupting me and saying, hey, Skip, Eric's got a question. Allison's got a question. Kate's got a question. Curb your enthusiasm for a moment and let's listen to these people. So please stop me anywhere along the way. So let me share my screen. So today we're going to cover 7 proven strategies. Why? I'm Skip Picciano again. You'll see me occasionally in a cowboy hat. I like to give out cowboy hats wherever I go. Most of my clients, whenever I've had a conversation with Wells Fargo, with OtterBox, with what have you, they get cowboy hats. Now, why is that? Well, when I showed up many years ago to a contact center in Wisconsin, they told me, hey, it's the wild, wild west out here, Skip. We really, really need your help. The next day I showed up in a cowboy hat. I said, howdy, partner, let's get to work. And so I've kind of been the guy with the cowboy hat. I also call myself an interventional CXologist. It means I really like to get within the thick of what's happening within your call center. I like to sit with the agents for at least an hour and see what's going on with the calls. Interview all the stakeholders, including the frontline and the leadership, just to get their perspective, to get new eyes on it. So I get in the weeds when I come and partake in what's going on within the environment of your contact center. Let's jump into the agenda. What are the 7 proven strategies we're going to cover today? Well, number 1, empower agents. Believe it or not, I come from a history and experience of being a contact center, call center agent, working for the phone companies, taking 100 calls a day, working on green screens, trying to learn 12 different environments within that just to make you get a POTS line back in the 90s before fire in the wheel. We weren't very empowered, but in a lot of ways we were. We'll talk about how to empower your agents to create effortless experiences. Data-driven insights. There's a lot of data that's going through each and every call. Are you capturing that? Are we doing it intelligently? Are we creating any insights to get better visibility into not only the customer, but also the agent experience? Streamlining processes. Well, that's a whole can of whip ass we could open up on that. But we'll talk about, not just people, not just the technology, but have we taken a look at some of the processes within your contact center and make sure those are streamlined? Omni-channel, old term. A lot of people are still using multi-channel and really not connecting those breadcrumbs so that their customers are not having to repeat themselves. And then AI, all the buzz today, right? AI this, AI that. Leadership out there today is saying, hey, Charlie, go get me some AI, just in a blind manner. Well, can we do that in a more thoughtful manner? We'll talk more about the agent. Again, it's near and dear to my heart. Having been a call center agent myself, I think a couple of people on this call, including Sean, right? You were a call center agent at one time. So we're going to talk about how to contribute to agent well-being, how that impacts the contact center. And then finally, we'll talk about modernizing your call center. All those guys that are banging your phone, making promises, but not necessarily delivering. So the rising expectations challenge, why are we talking about 7 proven strategies? Well, customers are expecting you not to really just be personalized and have instant service, but to almost be psychic. Forrester did a study last year and said 80%, damn near all of them, want you to have an instant response. You hear these things about Zappos and these 8-hour phone calls over a pair of shoes. That's ridiculous. These are lonely people that want those 8-hour calls over a pair of tennis shoes. Most of us don't even want to call the toll-free number. We want it instant through automation. We want you to know why we're contacting you before we do. And if you don't, almost that entire 80% is going to switch brands after one bad experience. So let's get into the strategies. Strategy number 1, again, agents. How do we power agents, not just with initial training, but continuous training? When I worked for the phone company, they put us in, it was constant training of groups of 24 all year long, 24 in, and by the end of the year, 2 would stay. And another 24, another 24. Every 12 weeks, another 24 coming through there. And they thought that was empowering us with their training. That was drinking through a fire hose and then throwing us feet to the fire and saying, go do your job. Many failed. But how can you upskill your agents? Well, if you do, you're going to boost CSAT, according to Gartner. And not just initial training, you got to implement some continuous training through microlearning. And there's a lot of great tools that provide a high value at a low cost, like Udemy, like LinkedIn Learning, and then also AI tools that can be built specifically relevant to your contact center and help assist the agent throughout the call and help train the agent during load times. Strategy number 2, and we're just going to cruise right along. So guys, stop me at any time. Personalize data-driven insights. So how do we get better insight into not just the agent experience, but also the customer experience? Well, again, there's a lot of data in there, and sometimes it's easy to get that data, and sometimes it's not. There's tools out there that will actually, they call it a lot of different things, bag in a box, rag in a box, but we can scrape your data, give you better insight into not just 1%, 2% of your calls, but actually 100% of your calls based on intention, based on whether the call went good or bad or how it was scored. And we can use AI to tailor responses in a real-time fashion or to use it for trainings. Strategy number 3, streamline processes with lean principles. What do we mean by that? Lean processes cut handle times by 20% according to Deloitte. We want to map workflows. Within the collective, I focus on technology and keeping vendors from bending the truth, bringing the right vendors, right contact center, and right software solutions for us to evaluate. Also looking at your existing technology and maybe making a better vendor relationship between you and your current solution provider. But there's other within the collective that'll help you build out workflows and map your customer journey and eliminate redundant steps that you've kind of become blind to because you've just been too close to it. So being part of this collective is a great resource for everybody on this call to be able to leverage this expertise. Again, this one's not mine, but mapping your customer calls in the call center, figuring out how and when to escalate can really streamline processes and bring economies of scale. Now we're getting back to omni-channel, how to adapt omni-channel seamlessly. Folks on the call, everybody out there using omni-channel or multi-channel, or at least 3 channels. I'm sure there's many of you that are doing that today. But are you really adopting an omni-channel approach, right? Are you integrating the different channels of communication so that when they try to connect with you via maybe a chatbot and that fails because notoriously somewhere along the line it might, what happens? All right, then they got to escalate it maybe to a live chat agent. Okay, maybe that fails. What happens? All right, maybe they got to call that dreaded toll-free number. And then they do, and the agent answers and says, "Hi, can I help you today?" You just spent 20, 30 minutes trying to get an update on your 401k, and all of that's gone. With a true omni-channel approach, you integrate the platforms, you unify the data, and you create a breadcrumb approach to where when they finally have to call that dreaded agent, that dreaded toll-free number, the agent picks up and says, "Charlie, I saw you were trying to make changes to your 401k. You got stuck at part D. Don't have to repeat yourself. I got you." And that's using an omni-channel approach with the customer. You can also use that when it comes to looking at analytics. You can use omni-channel and AI to create greater visibility again into both not just the customer experience, but also the agent experience. If you have other ways of optimizing omni-channel, put it in the chat and we can talk about it towards the end of this call because I'm going to leave a lot of time for Q&A and a lot of time to share your experiences of how you're using some of these 7 strategies. Some of the benefits I think we all know about out there in omni-channel, deflecting calls, which can be good and bad, but when you deflect calls, what does that do? Frees up your agents to take care of higher value calls, right? You can cut AHT by 10 to 12%. How are we cutting handling time using omni-channel? Well, that example that I just gave, if a customer was trying to self-serve through automation, through AI, gets stuck and it fails, and that contextual information is passed to the agent, that cuts that call by at least 10% because now the customer doesn't have to repeat themselves. The agent has the account, all the data, and knows what the customer wants. Again, going back to that original discussion about being damn near psychic when it comes to customers interacting with you. Strategy number 5, leveraging AI, but leveraging it in a thoughtful manner. So AI can handle whatever percentage of inquiries that you'd like. I always recommend starting with maybe one use case and allowing the agents to free up. We recently did one with a home service company that recommends contractors. They had a merger with another home service company that charged for the service. Home service company A did not charge. So when they merged, all the customers that were being charged wanted the free service. As a result, the contact center was just getting inundated with customers saying, "Hey, I want it free, I want it free, I want it free." Well, that's a perfect low complexity use case to where AI can just handle that call, automate that call, and free up the agents for more complex tasks. So when we look at leveraging it, here's what we see everyone wants, right? When it comes to contact centers, we want AI and automation to handle, yep, your simple type of use cases, but we're also working, and it's getting closer and closer to handle more complex use cases. There's always going to be a need for a human for, well, we work with AAA, right? Roadside assistance. If you call AAA, They say, hey, Pete, is everyone okay? Because what they don't want the robot to do is handle a 911 call, right? No, I'm injured. Okay, that's not an AI call. That's a nine. Let's get you some real help. But the complexity of automation and AI is getting greater and greater. But here's what everyone wants, and we talk about it a lot. But still, even today, this is what we see when it comes to self-service, leveraging automation and AI. We're still only leveraging it almost like a fancy IVR in just the most simplest cases. What's my order status? Can I pay my bill? And the complex is still left to the live agents, and of course, leaving what we have to for the human. The other thing that we're seeing out there are silos when we deploy AI. So, yeah, we might have a chat bot, we might have a text bot, we might have a social media scraper, and might even incorporate some advanced voice automation there. But what happens when, again, your customer starts in chat, maybe text, maybe start in social and moves between these channels, and then finally has to call you on the 800 number? Well, if they're in silos, there's no contextual information being shared across those channels, and it just becomes a frustration point instead of, hey, Sean, I saw you were doing something. No need to repeat yourself. And when you can integrate those channels, when you can integrate those separate engines, you create a wow moment from a customer that kind of is calling you because they're frustrated because their automation channel failed. But when you can share that information and know why and be that psychic agent picking up that call, now the customer's impressed and now you're building loyalty. So here's what we're trying to do with optimizing agent is a blend of, let's work more towards automation on the complex side. We also know that there's going to be a mix of complex use cases that we still have to use live agents for. But let's not leave people out there in silos, and let's not just leave the simple stuff out there. Because as we know, people want things instantaneously when they're reaching out to your brand. All right, I'll pause for a second. Any questions? I've been going rapid fire.
I'll just add, I think, Skip, you hit a really good point because, AI can do a lot of things, but the one thing I'd even kind of add a little bit, because it actually dovetails really nice here into agent well-being, is being careful to understand that there are real examples out there where employees are sabotaging AI because they're worried about their jobs. And so thoughtful use cases, et cetera, are very important these days, because again, you can't really do that well unless you're thinking agent well-being. So hopefully that's a good segue right into what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI can be used in a lot of different ways, also to help your agents and assist them. But an agent well-being. So when I was a contact center agent, I mean, it was sweatshop kind of conditions. They would follow me into the bathroom and ask me to get back on the queue. I'm like, give me a wireless. I'll be a team player. What can I tell you? But there's things I have to do throughout the day. Um, and there's a lot of bad training, bad treatment. I got in trouble for eating a peanut butter sandwich. We had 15-minute lunches. We weren't allowed to leave when the fire alarm went off, not knowing if it was real or not. It really, and hence there was a ton of attrition. Now, hopefully, nobody on this call has contact centers with those types of environments or subjects their agents to such harsh realities. But when you can create some level of well-being and just humanize your agents, and it gets harder and harder when it becomes remote agents versus brick and mortar. And we have resources for remote agent strategies, as well as Michelle Rowan, who's outstanding. She did that with Hilton, and they thought she was crazy. I think it was 10, 15 years ago. And now that's all she focuses on is remote agents, well before COVID or anything else. She is the authority. Anyhow, but when you do these kinds of things, it actually boosts retention by a significant amount. According to Gallup last year, did a study. And some of the actions that you can take to boost well-being is, of course, money. But what else do agents want? They want flexibility in their schedules. A lot of these operations are around the clock, 24/7 operations. And sometimes these schedules are a little kooky. I talk about my lunch and not being able to leave when the fire alarm goes off. following me into the restroom. Just crazy. We hate that. Be a little more flexible at your schedule. Um, Taking complaint calls all day can be draining on the soul. Order some mental health support. Another call centers I've seen, they've had chair massage folks, they've catered lunches, they've created an environment, again, under brick and mortar is much easier than remote, that provided, a little soothing for the soul. And mental health support doesn't mean, you necessarily need a physician, but just something to keep you from draining your brain. One call center I visited out in Massachusetts, they're actually a human IVR. They never really took the call from the customer, they just routed it. And so they would do somewhere between 500 and 750 interactions um, in like 2 hours' time. My head is going to explode if I had to do that job. I actually sat there with these guys, and it was like the old, if anybody's old enough to remember the beginning of George Jetson, where he's just doing basically a 21st century switchboard connecting calls when the IVR fails. Those kind of guys are going to need a lot of mental health support. And then the other thing to think about is, these people are in entry level positions and they're going to want some kind of career path. How do you keep them with you? How do you keep retention and reduce attrition? Provide that for them, again, through training, not just initial, but ongoing training and some type of career path that takes them to another place outside being an agent. Now here's the last, and I saved this for last because I'm thinking maybe this is why most people join the call today, and this is where I specialize, is modernizing call centers. I just got back from one just north of Chicago, and they were not a modernized call center. They bragged about their dot matrix printer, about their 10-year-old switch that's all on site, about their programmers and guys that write code, and very much manual physical approach. They like to throw people at their challenges, right? If you call their 800 number, they pick it up faster than 911. Most of the time, it doesn't ring. Very not modernized at all, but they are proud of that approach. Now, do they have challenges? Yep, they have customer service challenges. Do they have people challenges? Yep, they don't get very high scored on Glassdoor, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. But they have 1,000 agents. It's not a small operation. And they have a beautiful campus. They spend a lot of money on their headquarters, on their office. Everybody, all the men have to wear suit and ties, and all the women have a dress code. They provide a lot of great benefits and free lunches and all kinds of stuff like that, but will not spend any money on technology. Not to say that you have to invest in the latest and greatest, because that's another different dangerous strategy, but their strategy works in being able to pick up the call quickly, but doesn't really work in creating effortless experiences with their customers or with their agents. So what do we know that happens when you modernize your call center? Well, it can improve customer service. We can get faster resolution. Again, getting back to that idea of people wanting instantaneous reaction to their inquiries. Chatbots, personalized interactions. We talked about it, omni-channel support. All these things can allow you to provide 24/7 accessibility with and without a live agent, and to be a little bit more proactive. We can talk about solutions that allow for outbound via text, via email. Hey, here's the status of your order. Those kinds of things can lower the number of calls in your call center by keeping in contact with your customer. Modernizing your call center can remove friction. If we have good integrations amongst your CRM and your ACD, and instead of this siloed network of best solutions, but more of a unified network of good, relevant solutions that help you become a more efficient and effortless machine with your customers, can do a lot of benefits like automation of repetitive tasks, guided workflows, intelligent routing, and provide really good self-service options. And I can remember my son in college, he was moving from one apartment to the next on campus. They were kind of these campus controlled apartments, but they had to pay their own public service bill, Excel Energy bill. And he's like, Dad, where's the app? I go, what app? He goes, the app to change my address. Because that generation does not want to call a toll-free number. I go, I think you're going to have to call 800, whatever it is for Excel. And he just couldn't come to terms with that. But those kinds of things happen via generations. So what else can you do? What are the benefits? Happier agents, right? So I talk about when I was at the phone company, we had to learn 14 different types of systems that had 14 different shift F10, shift F12 to make something happen on a green screen. Very stressful. If it wasn't for the people around me that were lifers, I probably would have quit in the first month. And many did anyway. But if you have a more modernized call center, modernized interaction and UI with your agent. Again, reducing that work stress. You're empowering your agent with tools, and you can do things with gamification that provide recognitions. You can create better scheduling with modernized software out there that improves work-life balance. So there's a lot that comes with it instead of using things like Excel spreadsheets to schedule your agents. We talk about providing better insight. We mentioned a couple times, better insight in both the agent and the customer. You can track agent performance. You can share that with them. They can have their own dashboards revealing customer behavior. And we talked about some of the resources we have within the collective that can map journeys and a lot of really cool things around analytics and voice of the customer. Onboarding, I mean, training, we discussed that ad nauseum, and reducing attrition. All these things are possible just from taking a little modernized approach when it comes to your call center. And it doesn't have to be just technology and software. It can be, again, agent well-being. It can be in some of the processes and how you map out your processes. Now, which solution do you choose? You guys have all been to your CCWs, your tech shows, and there's a plethora of contact center solutions out there today, all telling you they're the latest and greatest things in sliced bread and can make all your worries go away. How do you do that? Well, when we talk to folks like we've spoke with Colorado 811, Wells Fargo, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Empire Today, all these guys, OtterBox we just finished up with, is we teach them, and I'm going to encourage everyone on this call to leverage a consultative approach when it comes to looking at modernizing your call center. Sit with your agents or have somebody that new eyes sit with your agent, have a side by side, and try to eliminate everything that you know when you do that. Again, encourage supervisor focus groups, workshops, and make sure you have an executive sponsor so that all this is not for nothing. If you need help doing that, sometimes bring in an outside consultant to act as that liaison can help you do that. And then everybody here at the collective will support you. If you have questions after this call, you can contact me there. You can also scan this QR code. I like to meet for coffee, old fashions. I know the best in Golden, Colorado. And we can start the conversation from there. We can also reach out to Sean and Kellen here on the call to get additional resources. We have books, we have templates, we have RFP templates, we have vendor templates, and we're all happy just to kind of talk with you about your specific use case here. This was just more of a high level approach of some of the 7 proven strategies, and just hoping it was helpful for you guys today.
I am sending everyone a poll. So as we think about where you think the most bang for your buck is, and it's going to load as people enter, where you think that the opportunity is ripe for improvement across these seven? I think Skip, I'll point blank say all seven are very important. So as people are answering the question, I'm curious, as you think about, did you rank these in, first to seven, or would you rank them seven to first? Or when you think about kind of what you see with the companies you work with, where they start and or what's maybe the most important?
Yeah, no, I love the question, and I had a hard time kind of narrowing it down. I started at 10, then I went to 15, then I cut it back down to 7. But with me, I think it's empower agents again, because I was an agent. Um, I think that that could include a lot of different things, right? Not only how you treat them, but also the tools that you give them. How easy do you make it to allow your agents to understand your environment training? How easy do you make it to allow your agents to get the information they need? That's usually some kind of tool or technology. And so, how effortless are you making your agent to do their job? We talk a lot about, effortless interactions from the customer perspective. And now more and more, we're starting to talk about employee experience, EX, well, agent experience. If your agent is not empowered, if he doesn't have the tools he needs, if he doesn't have the proper training and ongoing training within an environment that encourages him to be there, it's really hard to create an effortless experience and create loyalty with customers.
That's a great point. And honestly, as you were just explaining that, I started to hear the other of the seven coming into that. If you empower the agents, then you're focused on their well-being. If you empower your agents, you're using technology the right way. And so absolutely. So if I share the results with everybody, we were pretty balanced. We had a lot of different answers. Data-driven insights got a little bit more than the rest, but honestly, pretty wide range across the seven from that perspective, which is just again indicative of these are all very important questions. I know James put in the chat he definitely agrees with you on empower agents. I guess we know who answered it that way on the poll. Anyone want to share a little bit of their thoughts of maybe why they chose what they chose in that? Love to get some dialogue. So
Well,
raise your
since
hand
you
if you want to
mentioned
do
me,
that with
Sean,
the gestures.
I'll go
Yeah,
ahead and lead off.
yeah.
Well, so I'm an organizational psychologist and expert in EX, and so I'll state that I'm probably biased to say that it has something to do with the people and the agents and the leaders, for sure. But to that point, if you look at the advancements in AI and technology, that's not slowing down, certainly not stopping. But tech parity is a very real thing. Just because you have AI and modernize and streamline process and omni-channel, well, guess what? So does your competition. So it really comes down to how are you empowering, enabling, and giving those agents the capability to actually take action with the tools at their disposal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're not doing that, what do you have, James? You have attrition, right? Um, you have poor customer service. You have high handling time. So the fact is that even though I was in that incredibly poor environment with the call center, we were empowered in a different way. I could make 100 cell phones show up at your door tomorrow. I could fire up 100 phone lines in an hour, or I could disconnect your entire organization in 2 seconds. So they empowered us in kind of a weird way, in being able to have power over people's service, but they didn't empower us in being able to actually do our job and and serve our customer in an efficient manner, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Hey, Matt, you were up next. So why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so I'm the person who chose agent well-being because I actually think, Skip, with all due respect, I think you could have gotten it down to 6. I think agent well-being encompasses empowering them, among many other things that have to happen for them. So being empowered is a part of their sort of enjoying their time at work. I would say the one that gets ignored a lot is, especially in contact center environments, but also it's difficult when people work from home too, which is the ability to communicate with each other and not just with their managers. And
Yeah.
that can have, when you think about being in an office, in a normal sort of what we consider to be an office environment, there's a lot of just generalized interactions with people that aren't necessarily the person you report to. And I think that got lost in the sort of how we design contact centers. And I think it majorly contributes to lack of retention of employees, to a lack of expertise, not knowing what to do because they can't rely on each other to help each other. And then they also can't get to know each other and they can't really feel like they're part of something, right? If the only person I talk to are the customers and the guy that's on top of me, that's not really a very fun way to go to work, right? I need to like have, if I go to the break room and everyone is a stranger, it's probably not great.
No, that's dead on. I mean, if I didn't have two people that had 18 years in the job next to me when I was a call center agent, there I'd have been dead in the water. So yeah. Plus, there is something to be said, to Matt's point, about community, right? And I think we're starting to see some of the effects of that, post-COVID type of approach, contributing to attrition. Yeah, Michelle Rowan being the authority when it comes to remote agents, but there's some challenges even Michelle cannot overcome. So I think we may see things going back to somewhat of a hybrid approach and then some just pure brick and mortar. So awesome, awesome comments, Matt.
Eric, I think you were up next.
Yeah, let Allison go first because I'm going to stir the pot a little bit, so I don't want to disrupt the flow of a good conversation.
Oh, no.
You can go ahead, Eric, because I was just going to pull on a couple threads that have already been mentioned, but feel free to go ahead and I'll jump in after.
Go ahead, and then I'll stir the pot.
Yeah, thank you. So I was going to, a couple things have already been mentioned, right? Sean, you talked about how so many of these things are sort of integrated, right? And how empowering agents really touches on these other things. And then I think it was James who mentioned, we all have biases, and I'm hearing it come through in what you're saying, Skip. I think you have a little PTSD from your time in the call center. I chose data-driven insights for a couple of reasons, but one of them actually is the impact on the agents, right? So I think about how much more impactful a customer experience can be when we've leveraged data and connected data, right? But I also think it makes it a lot easier for agents. And I think it empowers them when they've got the data, when a customer doesn't have to repeat, right? So I think you used the example, Skip, in your presentation. Like when you've tried to do something online and you failed and then you call the dreaded 800 number, you shouldn't have to repeat yourself. And so oftentimes I feel like customers are so frustrated, take it out on the agents, which is not fair to the agents. So one of the reasons I chose data-driven insights is because it's your exact example, Skip. If a customer who's frustrated calls the contact center and an agent picks up, how amazing is it when they say, oh, Skip, I see that you've done let me explain. And so I feel like that one benefits colleagues as well as customers and is just simply more efficient for everyone.
That's exactly right, Allison. So what you've done when you're able to pass that contextual information over to your agent and your customer doesn't have to repeat themselves and your agents are now psychic, you've created a friction point and turned it into a wow moment, right? And so now you're like, hey, that wasn't so bad. But yeah, I appreciate that insight. And yeah, data, the unfortunate thing is there's so much data out there within call centers that is not being captured, not being leveraged, and people are throwing darts at a wall and saying, oh, I did my analytics, I'm good. And maybe it's 1% of the calls. Thanks for that contribution, Allison. I agree.
All right, Eric, stir away.
All right. So in the fall, I participated in a debate in a public conference around AI in the call center. And I think the premise of the debate was AI will take out 50% of calls. And I don't remember the time frame, call it 2 years, 3 years. I'd love to know where the group is on that. And then B, if you assume that to be true, regardless of which side of the debate you're on, would you change any of these strategies, or how would you change some of these strategies, knowing that this 800-pound gorilla is sitting out there?
Love that. I'll be quiet and let everybody else comment first because I do have some insight on that.
And let me frame it. It wasn't necessarily will replace 50% of agents. It was calls. So, I think part of the public debate got steered in the wrong direction of the whole oh my God, we're putting people out of work. And like, well, maybe, maybe not. Maybe we're repurposing them, right?
Eric, I think that there is so I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Not because it can't happen, but because I don't think that there is a widespread understanding of how to implement effective digital strategies that would lead to that result. So could it be done today? Absolutely. Will it be done today or in the next 2 years on a broad scale? I don't think so.
Matt?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I don't think it will happen, even though it could. I think the people that say it will happen are the ones that want to sell that technology to you. But I more than anybody.
True.
But on top of that, even if you agree with the premise that at some point in the future, some very, significant percentage of calls would be routed to virtual agents, be routed away from people that don't get routed away from people today. I still think those are the calls you probably actually don't want people to take in the first place. I think the calls that are really valuable to you are the ones that will continue to route to human beings. Like, not every call that comes into a contact center has value to the company, right? A lot of it is transactional, and transactional calls are important. They have to get solved, but they don't have any ancillary benefit. Okay. A call that is not transactional, a call that is interesting, can have follow-on benefits to the company, and it is worth investing in. If you can figure out a way to harvest the information, to capture what's being discussed, and to turn it into actionable insight, those calls are far more valuable than I think most companies realize.
Yeah, maybe Skip, before you jump in, I'll just add my 2 cents here. I think I like to equate this to we're in this multiverse environment. We got multiple futures that are possible. And I think we'll probably see a little bit of all of them. Different companies will take different approaches here as well. There will be companies that work tirelessly to replace 100% of their contact center and their people. There will be those. There already have been. They failed miserably, and they're now going back and rehiring.
Great example. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But as the tools get better, there will be those that go that route. I think there's going to be a certain subset that actually go completely human as a differentiator, like that, where they focus on saying, hey, you don't have to deal with technology. Call us. We'll talk to you. Now, they're not going to do it without AI, meaning the work is going to be done by AI that's listening live to that conversation, but they're going to have a human face. But it's going to be their selling point. And then I think most of everybody else is going to be somewhere in between. But I think that the idea that the future depends on who and their purpose of what they're trying to accomplish. But I do think the vast majority is going to be somewhat of a hybrid. I do think contacts are going to be, automated. I think there's going to be AI to AI conversations, meaning my AI that I have for myself will be placing an order with an AI for a company, and even getting service for that. So the reality is, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. And to your point, I think high percentages are talked about by people that are trying to sell you AI. But I do think it'll be somewhere in the middle there. I think there's going to be a big chunk of contacts that are AI related, but I think the right way of thinking about that is you're always one very easy touch away from a human, even if you're dealing with AI. And it's not a wall, it's more a funnel. Yeah, AI is used less as a wall, but more as a funnel. And right now, there's too many people using it as a wall. But I think it'll be a really nice way to say, I personally think in the future, and I don't know how far away this is, but I'm going to be a call center agent, and I'm going to have my own AI bots supporting the customers, but I'm right there to jump in on any number one of those calls as it's happening, to humanize it and provide that additional service. But those, again, multiverse, who knows? It's going to be different for everybody.
James raised his hand.
Yeah, James.
Hey, yeah. Sean, great stuff. Totally agree with everything that you just said. And as I'm listening and reflecting on this, And that human to human connection, which I agree with you, is still going to be important, particularly at certain levels. I'm curious what the team here thinks about outsourced call center and how that can impact here, because is it important for that agent to actually have an emotional connection to the product or service that they're actually helping to solve a problem for or defend in some cases, versus it being completely outsourced, even with the enhancements that could come in AI? Case in point, when I call Xfinity, and try to resolve an issue, I know that 100% of the people on the other end of the phone have never used Xfinity and have never experienced the frustration that I'm dealing with, and it irritates me. So I'm curious what the team thinks here.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in a lot of BPO outsourced type of call centers, and they range in all levels, right? Where they're dedicated to maybe one, two customers, which is pretty rare. Most of them are, I think the point you were making, James, they're overly subscribed, right? And which I could not do that job, right? Or be relevant or have any type of expertise and dedicated to provide a level of customer service if I'm across multiple brands. There's actually buildings in the Philippines where when they get done with one ship, they go up 3 stairs and work for another BPO. BPOs are an interesting bunch. They fight to win business on margins. But more and more, to your point, we're seeing a lot of nearshore and offshore. I think we have an outsourced consultant or expert on this call. Is that you, Allison? No. Okay.
Kate.
Allison
Kate
raised
is.
it.
Yeah, Kate is.
Kate is.
Yeah.
Maybe Kate can add
Um,
color to my conjecture here.
you're absolutely right, Skip. They are all over the place. And the important part is for anyone who is interested in outsourcing is to just simply do their homework, whether you have an internal team that can do all of that for you, or whether you go to someone like I said, outsourced consultants who have those partners. But you're going to find all level of them. But another interesting, a roundabout way to go at finding someone really good is to find a staffing company that you know that can say, hey, we work with these BPOs. So the staffing company sometimes has really good insights on where they are sending agents that they are getting feedback from that is really good. And I'm just going to call out somebody right now, Instant Teams. They are an organization that, uses military spouses to do staffing. And they are really interesting because they are considered onshore agents, even though they may be working anywhere in the world because they would be living on a military base. So they may be in the Philippines or Guam or somewhere in Europe, and you're just working with a military spouse. And so that's just my 2 cents. You're going to get some agents that are going to be really dedicated, that work really well with the brands, that feel like they are working directly for the brand because the brand has provided good training through the BPO. And you're going to get some that are just working on those slim margins and in the Philippines or in India that really don't care whether you come in and go out the door.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so I guess the moral of the story is when it comes to selecting a BPO, when it comes to outsourcing for your call center, you're really in charge because there's so many different flavors, so many different ways to leverage outsource. And Kate's got hundreds of them depending on the use case, whether it's a retail environment, a medical environment, number of agents, and can kind of help you sort through that. So, Kate, I'm glad you're on the call today. Allison, raise your hand.
Sure. I just raised my hand just to respond to the point James brought up. So James, I came most recently from an internet services provider that did all of our customer support onshore, except for one market, which we sent offshore. And the reason we did that is because we had acquired that market and they had always had offshore servicing. So we stuck with that. At one point when metrics were tanking, like business metrics were tanking for that market, we all started looking into, what could be going on. We don't have the acquisition numbers that we were expecting to have. When we looked at call center metrics, all of the call center metrics were in line, right? So AHT, ASA, like all the standard call center metrics. When we looked at transactional NPS, that particular market was 33 points lower. And so as we dug in to
Mm.
understand, you know, they're servicing customers the same way, but we're not seeing the same satisfaction or the same happiness with it, right? And one of the key findings is, you know, one of them for sure was what you just said. None of them had ever used our actual internet, our modems, our service, right? They had never, because they were in the Philippines. The other thing though was language barriers, and it wasn't necessarily just accent. It was, you know, like I might call this a glass, you might call it a cup. And so as we're talking about modems and routers and gateways and like all these things, there was just this disconnect in what they called it, what we called it, because they had never seen it. You know, they're sorting through product guides that are dozens, sometimes hundreds of pages long. And it was just interesting because from a CX perspective, these offshore agents were completely missing the mark. But from a pure business perspective, separate from CX, nobody blinked an eye because, again, they were delivering all the metrics that they were held to. So I bring that up because it's exactly supporting what you're saying, James. But I think it's also important to look at offshore agents across a number of different metrics, not just business, but also customer experience type metrics.
That's such a great point. Taking a systems thinking approach here is just so critical. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Allison.
Sure.
Yeah, awesome point. And yeah, thanks for adding to my Philippines story. But I want to bring you on next for streamlining processes, just looking at the sticky notes on your wall.
It's how I think, right?
I like it.
It's my Kanban board, my backlog. It's how I think. It's color coded.
Very good. How are we doing on time, Sean?
Well, we are at time. We're rounding out the last couple of minutes. So I do want to thank everyone for attending this week. Honestly, this was an absolutely great topic, great engagement. So I appreciate that as well. Everybody, give me this is a virtual round of applause for Skip. So thank you, Skip, for sharing and bringing in such great dialogue. Again, many of you, I think, are already joined, and I think you're all joined to the collective, but join us. We've got upcoming sessions coming. We've got one with Nate Brown, with special guest speaker. If you're familiar with Nate Brown, he's coming on the 18th is our next session, and it's our full monthly meeting. So we're going to have breakouts. We're going to have great content from Nate, and we'll be ready to really continue to do that. So he's founder of the CX Accelerator and over there at Metric Sherpa as well. So you won't want to miss his session. So, but to grab him, go to our website, cxontherocks.com, and take a look at the events and join us. So thanks again. You guys have a great day and hopefully have a great weekend.